April 18, 1942. The North Pacific, 650 miles east of Japan. Waves crash against the USS Hornet's bow as freezing wind lashes the flight deck. The gray dawn is thick with mist, the sea churning beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. On the carrier's deck sit 16 twin-engine B-25 Mitchell bombers. Their wings folded tight, noses painted with grim determination. No one has ever seen anything like it. These bombers don't belong on a carrier. They're too heavy, too large. Their takeoff runs too long. The men on the Hornet whisper its madness. To launch them from a pitching deck into a headwind, 700 miles from the enemy coast. But the man behind this mission, Lieutenant Colonel James Harold Doolittle, stands at the edge of the flight deck, one snapping his leather jacket. His face is calm, analytical, the eyes of a man who knows what's at stake. After Pearl Harbor, America needs more than revenge. It needs hope. Below deck, sailors and airmen move like ghosts through the narrow corridors. Mechanics check bomb racks, refuel tanks, tighten bolts that may decide life or death. Pilots rehearse takeoff sequences under dim red lights. Full throttle, no hesitation, no second chances. A sailor leans over the railing, staring at the enormous planes tied down on deck. "Never thought I'd see the day," he mutters. "Army planes on a Navy carrier." His mate smirks. "Yeah, and flying to Tokyo, no less. They'll be lucky to make it off the deck, let alone back in the ready room." Doolittle briefs his men for the final time. The room is silent but for the hum of the ship's engines. "Our target is Tokyo," he says firmly, tracing a line across the map. "We'll hit military and industrial sites, docks, power stations, oil storage. It's not about damage. It's about sending a message." He pauses, eyes sweeping the room. "The Japanese think they can't be touched." "We're going to prove them wrong," the men exchange glances. They all know what Doolittle isn't saying. There's no way back. The bombers can't land on the carrier. After the strike, they'll have to fly on toward China, praying to find airfields or open terrain before their fuel runs dry. Then, at 7:38 a.m., the calm breaks. A lookout shouts from the bridge, "Enemy patrol boat spotted." Bearing 080 degrees, the ship's siren wails. The crew scrambles. Guns thunder. The USS Nashville opens fire, shells pounding the horizon. The Japanese vessel vanishes beneath a column of smoke, but the alarm has been raised. Tokyo knows something is coming. Doolittle doesn't hesitate. He turns to his pilots. "We launch now." The deck crew races into action, untying the chocks and signaling the first aircraft forward. The wind howls across the deck, gusting at over 30 knots. One by one, the bombers roll into position. The crewmen watch from the railings, silent, some crossing themselves. Each aircraft has just 467 feet of runway before the deck drops away into the ocean. Doolittle climbs into the cockpit of the lead plane. Aircraft 40-2344. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Richard Cole, checks the gauges. "Engine steady?" "Both green," Cole replies. The deck officer waves his flag. Doolittle nods once. Throttle forward. Engines roar. The B-25 lurches down the deck, tires bouncing on wet steel. The bow dips sharply. And then, at the last possible second, the bomber lifts. Cheers erupt from the crew. One down, 15 to go. Through wind and rain, each Mitchell takes off, barely clearing the carrier's bow, engines screaming as waves break just feet below. Every man aboard knows, once these planes vanish into the fog, they are on their own. From the Hornet's bridge, Admiral Bull Halsey watches the last bomber rise into the gray sky. He turns to his staff and says quietly, "May God be with them all." 16 silver specks fade into the clouds. Bound for Japan. April 18th, 1942. 12:15 p.m. Tokyo time. The skies above Japan are clouded but calm. Below, the city hums in wartime rhythm. Factories churning, military trains shrieking through tunnels, civilians unaware that across the Pacific, vengeance is already on its way. Through a thin veil of cloud, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle's B-25, Mitchell breaks into the sunlight. His crew peers out at the sprawling maze of Tokyo beneath them. Smoke rises from factory stacks. The Imperial Palace glimmers faintly in the haze. Doolittle adjusts his headset. "All right, boys, let's make it count." His bombardier, Lieutenant Norden, leans over the scope. "Target in sight. Steelworks, Koto District." Bombs away. 4 500-pound demolition bombs drop cleanly from the bay, vanishing into the clouds. Seconds later, impact. The city below erupts in thunder. Shock waves ripple through the streets. Windows shatter for blocks. In another formation, Lieutenant Travis Hoover's B-25 streaks over Yokohama. Flak bursts fill the air, black puffs against the pale sky. The old Japanese anti-aircraft guns swing frantically upward, too slow to catch the low-flying bombers. Inside the cockpit, Hoover grins. They never thought we'd come this far. His co-pilot laughs, though the sound trembles. They'll never forget it. Over Nagoya, another crew releases their payload on a military dockyard. Workers scatter, pointing skyward at the strange twin-engine planes. Biplane-era aircraft, flying impossibly low and fast. Some Japanese officers believe they're American seaplanes from nearby islands. Others think it's a trick. By the time anyone knows the truth, the damage is done. Back in Tokyo, panic spreads. Sirens wail. Fire crews scramble. Japanese civilians stare upward in disbelief. For years, propaganda had promised that the emperor's skies were sacred. No enemy could ever reach the home islands. Now, the myth is burning. On the bridge of the Imperial General Headquarters, officers rush to the map table. "American bombers, over Tokyo." Admiral Yamamoto's staff are stunned. "Impossible," one mutters. "They can't have launched from a carrier." Their range doesn't allow it, but radar reports and eyewitnesses confirm the unthinkable. The Americans have struck Japan itself. Meanwhile, Doolittle's plane climbs away from the smoking city. Below, Tokyo shrinks into the haze. The crew sits in silence, adrenaline fading into awe. Doolittle breaks it with a calm voice. "Gentlemen, mission accomplished. Now we just have to find China, but the hardest part of the mission has only begun." Hours pass. The bombers fly west, engines droning over endless gray ocean. They've flown farther than planned. The early launch from the Hornet means their fuel is running dangerously low. By nightfall, a storm brews ahead. Rain lashes the windscreen. Lightning flashes across the horizon. Somewhere beyond that storm lies the coast of China, their only hope of survival. One crew member whispers, "If we make it through this, I'm never complaining about a long flight again." At 9:20 p.m., Doolittle checks his fuel gauge, almost empty. He turns to his men. "We won't make it to the airfields." Prepare to bail out one by one, the crew members nod. They know what it means. The plane has carried them across the Pacific, over Tokyo, and now it will carry them no farther. He steadies the aircraft over dark mountains, wind howling through broken clouds. "Jump!" he shouts. One by one, they leap into the black night, disappearing into the storm. The last to leave, Doolittle glances once more at his instrument panel, cracked, trembling, but loyal to the end. He whispers to himself, "You did your job." Then he leaps. The B-25 disappears into the darkness, its engine sputtering before slamming into the side of a mountain. Across the skies of eastern China, other crews do the same. Some land on beaches, others in rice paddies, a few captured by Japanese patrols. Out of 80 men, most survive, thanks to Chinese villagers who risk their lives to hide and protect them from occupation troops. But the cost is high. In retaliation, Japanese forces slaughter an estimated 250,000 civilians in the Zhejiang Jiangxi provinces during the search for downed airmen. News of the raid spreads fast. In Japan, it's reported as a minor attack. But in America, it's everything. Headlines scream, U.S. bombers strike Tokyo. For a nation still grieving Pearl Harbor, the psychological victory is immense. And for the Japanese High Command, the shock is even greater. The home islands are no longer untouchable. The impossible has happened. April 19th, 1942. Dawn over the Pacific. On the flight deck of the USS Hornet, sailors stand in silence, scanning the empty horizon. The 16 B-25s that roared into the gray sky the day before are gone. No radio contact, no return signal, no smoke on the horizon. Just the sound of wind and the distant churn of the carrier's engines. Admiral William Bull Halsey leans over the bridge railing, his face carved with fatigue. He mutters to his chief of staff, "They've done their part." God help them now, every man aboard knows the truth. Those bombers were never coming back. The mission was a one-way strike. And yet, even without confirmation, the ship feels lighter, as though a collective burden has been lifted from the crew's shoulders. Thousands of miles away, on the streets of Tokyo, that burden has landed hard. Smoke still hangs over the capital, mingling with the gray morning mist. The fires from the previous day's bombing are only now dying out. Civilians walk in stunned silence through neighborhoods shattered by the explosions. Shops stand roofless. Trolley cars lie twisted on their sides. At the Imperial General Headquarters, the mood is electric and furious. Japanese officers gather around a large map of the Pacific. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet, listens to the initial damage reports. They're not catastrophic. The bombings were small, mostly symbolic. But the psychological blow is devastating. Yamamoto's voice is low but steady. This means only one thing. The Americans reached our shores by sea. A staff officer frowns. "But, sir, that's impossible." "No carrier could." "It's not impossible," Yamamoto interrupts sharply. "It's unforgivable." He turns to his naval planners. "They must have launched from a carrier force. If they can approach our home islands undetected, they can strike again. We must find them and destroy them. That single decision will set in motion a chain of events leading to one of the most pivotal battles in naval history." Midway. Meanwhile, far from the polished floors of Tokyo's war rooms, James Doolittle lies in a straw hut somewhere in central China. His parachute drop had ended in a tangle of mud and bamboo. Chinese farmers found him unconscious and carried him through enemy patrols to a guerrilla outpost. When he finally wakes, his first words to his rescuers are bitter. "I've failed. Lost every plane, endangered my men, and given the enemy cause for reprisal. He doesn't yet know the truth, that his so-called failure has electrified a nation." Across the Pacific, in the White House, President Franklin D. Roosevelt reads the initial intelligence reports. He smiles faintly for the first time in months. "Get this to the press," he says. "Tell them our bombers came from Shangri-La." Within hours, the headlines flash across America. Doolittle bombs Tokyo. Crowds pour into the streets, waving flags, cheering the impossible news. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the United States feels like it's on the offensive. The raid also sends shockwaves through Germany and Italy. Nazi officers privately expressed disbelief that America, barely 5 months into the war, could strike Japan's homeland. For the Allies, it's a rallying cry. For the Axis, it's a warning. But nowhere is the reaction more personal than in the skies over Europe. Among Luftwaffe pilots stationed in occupied France, the news of American biplanes, slow, lumbering twin-engine bombers made of canvas and metal tubing, striking Tokyo becomes a running joke. They call it the flying piano. One German ace laughs in a cafe in Paris, barely faster than a pigeon. The Japanese must be blind. The laughter doesn't last long. Within a year, those same B-25 Mitchells will appear over Italy, Sicily, and North Africa, dropping bombs on Axis convoys, airfields, and supply depots. They'll be faster than expected, deadlier than believed, and flown by crews who've already proven that no target is out of reach. In the summer of 1943, when German radar stations along the Mediterranean coast detect incoming raids, the signalmen don't laugh anymore. They mutter one word over their headsets: Mitchells. Back in China, after weeks of evading Japanese patrols, most of Doolittle's men are rescued by Chinese partisans and American intelligence officers. When Doolittle finally returns to Allied lines, he expects court-martial. Instead, he's greeted as a hero. General Hap Arnold, head of the U.S. Army Air Forces, pins the Medal of Honor to his chest. "For leading the first air raid on the Japanese homeland," he declares, "and for proving that courage can outfly range and faith can outlast fear." Doolittle bows his head. He doesn't smile. He simply says, "Thank you, sir." But the real heroes are still over there. As the months pass, the Doolittle Raid becomes legend, retold in every American barracks, every newspaper, every ship's mess. But its greatest legacy lies